Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, and again, welcome. Great to have you in this very room, as well as online, as well as listening and watching later. I'm so glad you're with me. As you may know, our topic for the month of November has to do with the sacred and the mundane, the sacred, and the profane. Oh my. And so this morning we're going to be talking about the experience of the sacred. I had the opportunity to speak at a Disciples of Christ church in Pacific Beach last Sunday morning and talk about urban street angels, which, as most of you know, is my other job, working with homeless 18 to 24-year-olds, and talk about the program and our history and all the rest of that. And it was absolutely beautiful sanctuary with the table and the elements for communion and all of that, and they were casual because I was dressed better than the minister who gave the talk, which was absolutely fine, but very, very, very well, fairly high church, but very sacred. And what I know is, and so think about our concept of the word sacred, because that's what this whole thing, this thing called life, that's what it's about, is our perception of that word that we're assigning to the experience and to what we're seeing and what we're viewing. It's all about our perception of the word. So think about your perception of the word sacred. Is it this? It's the high spiritual experience. It might be meditation. It might be other things related to it. Ideally, it's coming into home. And while we don't have the table with the communion elements and all the rest of that, this is absolutely a sacred space. But I would suggest that at any point, wherever your 2 feet are planted, is a sacred space. And we'll talk much more about that this morning. So we look sometimes at life and what we see and what we experience and put it, whatever it is, into 3 categories. The ordinary, the mundane, yes, I'm an adult now and so I have to do this. The sacred, probably with rules and practices. So again, our meditation, our Sunday morning together, that sort of thing. And then ultimately, ideally, the aha that maybe every single experience, no matter what it looks like and how we judge it, is sacred. Every single experience is sacred. I found this, so I was looking around for a definition of the word sacred, because again, it all has to do with our definition of it and how we experience it. Found a couple of different ones that I didn't too much care for, but I found this and I didn't write down where it came from. I like to quote when I can, or give credit where credit's due when I can, but I like the concept of this. That's what sacredness is. Things are sacred if and only if they matter and cannot be bought. Interesting. Only if they matter and cannot be bought. So sometimes we separate this concept of sacredness apart from the day-to-day stuff, and we wait for our sacredness until we can get home and do our meditation or our yoga, or we wait until Sunday morning so that we can get to church and do the sacred thing, and all the rest of it is just the mundane and the stuff, to use a purely spiritual term. But what if we looked again and considered our day-to-day activities, our interactions with one another, as sacred as well, if they matter and cannot be bought? I don't know about you, but it flies in the face of everything I find as logical that Thursday after next is Thanksgiving. Thursday after next. Yes, not this, but next Thursday is Thanksgiving. What happened, and I know we say this every year, and don't anybody tell me that time goes faster as you get older, because I so don't want to hear that. But it's going to be Thanksgiving, and so we're planning the events at work, and somebody said, well, when are we going to have the dinner for the December holidays? And I said, well, we'll do that in December. And they said, well, yeah, and that's about 3 weeks from now. So we're have a date on the calendar for this December dinner and celebration and all of that already. And then we'll be turning the calendars and it'll be 2024. Where have we been all these years? Oh my goodness. So you may have plans with family or friends for Thanksgiving. I will be in Kentucky with my late husband's family for Thanksgiving dinner and spend a couple of days with them, and then go visit friends in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is always a wonderful sacred experience. And we laugh a lot, we cry a little, we just have a wonderful time. But I would suggest that your experience, and whether you're having whether you're having a turkey sandwich from Chili's or a big gathering or whatever you're doing, your experience of Thanksgiving in that consciousness of giving thanks is a sacred experience. And all we need to do to change it and make it one is to be aware, is to recognize that this is a sacred experience, because we can make everything a sacred experience. Especially, and now it's been a couple of years, thank goodness, but remember not too long ago when I really want to go for Thanksgiving, but I couldn't, because we weren't really able to travel because of COVID and the fears and the restrictions. Maybe, and I was thinking about this yesterday, maybe the experience of COVID allowed us to recognize what we had taken for granted in the past, and it certainly did for me. And so those things that, well, of course I can go and do whatever, and then for a while I couldn't go and do. And so maybe that makes what I'm going and doing now again just a little more sacred in my mind and in my heart. If you don't remember what happened when, if you have a smartphone and take photos, you can scroll up and scroll up and scroll up, and that's how you're able to remind yourself of what happened. And you might remember those days. And so these are the lines. This was March of 2020, because I work in a shelter for 18 to 24-year-olds. We have 70 youth in downtown San Diego who need, and let's just boil this down, they need toilet paper. And remember those days. So this was March of 2020 in Costco in La Mesa and Costco in Mission Valley. And if you remember those days, boy, strange days indeed. Remember that song? I forget who sings it, but dang. Strange days indeed. And remember the days, because they, in their infinite wisdom and kindness, opened an hour early for those of us of a certain age. So I would go and stand in the cold with 150 or 200 of my closest friends at 7 o'clock, waiting for the store to open at 9 o'clock so that I could go and buy one case of toilet paper, because you were limited to one case because of a disease that had nothing to do with your gastric internal system. How goofy was that? But we needed to latch on to something, I guess, so we'll stock up on something that we absolutely need. So funny. But met this wonderful couple from Michigan. They were on the road and having a wonderful time, and then all of a sudden their wonderful time shifted because they couldn't go anywhere or do anything because COVID arrived. But remember those days. So this afternoon, when I go to Costco, I know that, and if you go to La Mesa, you know that it's a little bit of a challenge because they're working on things and some of the parking lots closed off. But still, chances are I can go in and buy whatever it is I need without any trouble at all and do the self-checkout if I'm in a hurry and just do that and move on. How many things in our lives did we take for granted before? Because I certainly did. And now we recognize it always was a sacred experience. And that is pretty amazing that you can just go over here and get your case of Reese's peanut butter cups and whatever else you can't live without. It's pretty amazing. It really is. That's a sacred experience. That, to me, is a sacred experience. Time with dear ones, I believe, no matter what we're doing, and whether it's Thanksgiving dinner or just hanging out for lunch or just meeting someone for coffee, having that time together is a sacred experience because they matter and cannot be bought. The sacred is right here in this moment, in this very room, and again, wherever your feet are holding you up, that is a sacred place, and that can be that sacred experience when we allow it to. I have a great quote from Ernest Holmes from Love and Law. There's not a day in my life that goes by that I do not take the time to unify myself in my consciousness with big things, to think that I am one with all activities, all industries, all commerce, and just feel that through reaching out and encompassing the largest fields of activity of the world, then you are one with the infinite stars in the heavens, and that is to see things. But I would also suggest that sacredness, that oneness is in the small things, in the mundane things, in the day-by-day experiences of miracles that Joe talked about, that check that comes in the mail that you weren't expecting. We used to call it unexpected income, but it's not. Because as we know that Spirit is our source, that when we absolutely know and accept that we have everything we need and more besides, of course we're expecting that. And of course Spirit is going to respond and give us whatever it is we need. It's a miracle when you're running just a little late, and yes, I'm grounded, and yes, it's okay, but I also know that I'm going to get there on time, and every single stoplight is not a stoplight, it's a green light. That is a sacred experience. That is a miracle. And sometimes maybe I just didn't know that I need to take time to breathe a little. And so I get the red light and the red light. And yes, I can be really irritated, and for the love of God, I need to get there. Or I can recognize, there's a little extra sacred time here for me to be grounded when I get to wherever it is that I'm going. It's all in how we judge the situation. So the small things as well as the big things in this experience of sacredness. So I have three points to consider, starting with the sacred as connection. During our meditation and our connective practices that we talked about, contemplative practices, our time together on Sunday, if we're taking a class, if we're doing something else, yoga or whatever, absolutely that connection and that sacredness. Connection with the physical world around us. Because if there's only one, sometimes we start our affirmative prayer, our spiritual mind treatment with there is only one power, presence, mind, life, and intelligence. And if there's only one, that means that I'm part of it and you're part of it. And the person on the corner is part of it. And the person that just makes us the slightest bit crazy is part of it, bringing us a gift that we'll talk about later. So the physical world around us, the earth, one another, the animals, everything we see is part of this connection to the sacred. Connection with others. And again, those people that, yes, I'm the beloved, you're a little iffy. That's not how that works. And sometimes it's a bitter pill to swallow. But we are all one. And then the connection of our self with our self, our personal self with that divine presence within us. How often do we allow ourselves to, and remember in the New Testament in the Beatitudes, Jesus said to ask, seek, and knock. How often do we ask, seek, and knock? I don't know what to do about this. I don't know what the next step is. And so I need to worry about it. So I need to think about it, and I need to, okay, so you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this. I have a financial decision that I need to make sometime next year. I will not need to make it, and I will not make it until sometime next year. But I find myself, well, I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do this. But what about this, and what about this in October and November when I don't need to do anything about any of it until May or June? And so I was thinking about what I'm thinking about, and the still small voice said, with a sense of humor, which I absolutely know that Spirit has, you're just kind of like a little kitten batting this ball or this wadded up aluminum foil all over the room. Because, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? Ooh, I just remembered. I used to use this affirmation, but in this moment, all is well. Gee, Jerry, maybe you should buy what you're selling. There's a really good idea. In this moment, all is well. What do we, there's a word that I don't have with me, it might come to me, but how often do we spend our time thinking and worrying and wondering and batting back and forth all the different choices for this that we're not going to need to make for another 6 months? Versus saying, in this moment, all is well. Because the sacred moment isn't in the future. The sacred moment wasn't in the past. The sacred moment is right here, right now, in this moment when we allow ourselves to be fully present. And I'll talk more about that. Connection, so connection with ourselves and allowing ourselves to ask, what makes sense for me? What's next for me? And I'll go back to with others because how important it is for us to allow ourselves to put the phone down, face down, put it on vibrate or stun, or even turn it, and they do. There is a button on that phone that allows me to turn it off. Can you even imagine? Really? Yes! You can do that. You really can do that. Several years ago, we were at a family gathering. People had, my late husband and I had flown in from San Diego. There was family there from Detroit, people there from Kentucky. There are 8 of us sitting around the table, and every single one of us was on our phones. And my late husband's favorite aunt said, now, Do you see this? So we all turn it off, or at least put it on vibrate and turn it over. Because the sacredness happens in this moment when we're fully present. How wonderful it is to be present with someone we love, to be present with someone who has a situation that they need to talk about, because chances are your situation is something that either I'm going through as well, or have, or will. And so in allowing ourselves to listen, in allowing ourselves to be fully present, that's where we experience this sacredness. So be here now. Be here now. This connection is so wonderful with people that we love and have life in common with. And this connection is so wonderful with people that we have little or nothing in common with, because it allows us, when we allow it to, it allows us to open our minds and get another perspective. How was your experience with that? What was your experience growing up? What was your experience? How are your, if you have different political views than I do, I know, right? But how is that different? Because I'm going to Kentucky, and that while they just re-elected a Democratic governor, yes, sorry, pretty much all the rest of their government is Republican and conservative. And I want to know, because I'm curious, because God knows I'm happy to explain my opinion and views on things, and I want to know. So why do you feel that way? Why do you believe that? When we're in the lusciousness and the sacredness of this moment, we allow our egos and our opinions to say, shh, and don't. Rather than being ready to say, yes, but, we listen. The sacredness is in the listening and the learning and the experience, not the planning for our rebuttal to whatever it was they said as soon as it comes out of their mouth. The sacredness is in this moment, in the listening. So sacredness as connection, and sacredness as mindset. So looking beyond the appearance of things in search of truth, beauty, and awareness. Because very often we look at a situation that's a mess. We judge it as a mess. And there may very well be a mess, but there's something beyond that. There's some good, there's some blessing, there's some possibility in whatever that is, and how important it is for us to recognize that there's always more than what we see. We see people doing what they're doing, and sometimes we judge before we ask, what's going on here? What's the motivation behind this? What I know is everybody, every single person on this planet wants the same thing: to love and to be loved, to feel safe and to have enough. I'm absolutely convinced that that's every single person on this planet that ever has been here, ever will be here. It is basic human nature to love and to be loved, to feel safe and to have enough. And admittedly, different people go about it in different ways to get whatever it is, but that's the goal. That's everybody's goal, is just those three things. So look, we can look beyond the appearance of what they're doing and how they act and question what's going on here and what's the motivation for this. Look for and find the sacredness in every moment and every activity. The sacredness of sitting in line waiting for gas at Costco. I love to pick on Costco. The sacredness of washing dishes, the sacredness of whatever it is, because this moment has never happened before and never will again. And then again, looking for and appreciating those ordinary blessings. I was trying to find the book that talks about ordinary blessings. It might be Mary Morrissey, or it might be Marianne Williamson. But just we just have in San Diego, in La Mesa, in the middle of November, when it's going to be 70 some odd degrees, and I'm looking for a short sleeve shirt because I'm too warm. We have a pretty ridiculous life here. Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. And you might have heard that what we focus on expands. And so as we're focusing on our ordinary blessings, as we're focusing on these sacred experiences and sacred times in our lives, we get more of those and we see more of those. If we focus on anything that's, for me, anything that starts with "for the love of God," that's my, you've heard me say that before. That's kind of my flag. Jerry, what's going on here? Let's bring this back. But if we focus on those experiences and those thoughts and those ideas, then the universe says, well, that's what you want, and we get more of that. So we can, at any point, always decide. So the ordinary blessings, the sacredness in the every moments. One of my favorite books, Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh, and he talks about the cookie of his childhood. When I was 4 years old, my mother used to bring me a cookie every time she came home from the market. I always went to the front yard and took my time eating it, sometimes half an hour or 45 minutes for one cookie. I would take a small bite and look up at the sky. Then I would touch the dog with my feet and take another small bite. I just enjoyed being there, with the sky, the earth, the bamboo thickets, the cat, the dog, the flowers. I was able to do that because I did not have much to worry about. I didn't think of the future. I didn't regret the past. I was entirely in the present moment with my cookie, the dog, the bamboo thickets, the cat, and everything. Maybe you have the impression that you've lost the cookie of your childhood, but I'm sure it's still there somewhere in your heart. The present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you're attentive, you will see it. So I love this little story because I totally have this 4-year-old boy sitting on the front porch or the stoop, depending on what the house was like. But he's there with his cookie. He's barefooted. He's got his foot rubbing the dog. It's a gorgeous day. I love the picture of that. And the point is that how often do we eat whatever it was and then we think, did I have, what was that? And it's either so good that you want bite after bite after bite, or it's just, okay, I got to eat something, so we'll just get this done and move on. But we won't eat that meal again. We won't ever eat that meal again. So is there a way to recognize that as a sacred experience as well? And ideally, it's the best chocolate you've ever had, or it's the best whatever you've ever had. But no matter what it is, allow that to be a sacred experience as well. So sacred as a mindset. And again, no matter what we're doing, when we're conscious of the lusciousness of this moment, we get to experience more of that. Whether it's dinner on Thanksgiving with fine china and linen tablecloths and napkins and the best silver, or it's sitting at home in front of the television eating leftover pizza with a plastic fork. It doesn't matter. It's the experience of the sacred. It's the mindset. It's not what you're doing. How often do we save the silver, save the fine linens, save the china, save the shishi stuff for a special occasion? And so we only use it once a year, if that. I have to tell you, and some of you might have heard this story before. So my parents, we moved in from San Diego to Escondido. They built a house in Escondido in 1962 and lived in it for almost 60 years. And if you've ever lived in a place for a long time, you know that the stuff accumulates and the stuff accumulates. And so my father died in 2014 probably, and so we sold the house and we're packing everything up and moving my mother to San Diego. And there's a closet in the hallway, or a cupboard in the hallway, and so it's the last day, and the pod, the storage pod thing that you park in the driveway and you go out and load it, so it's in the driveway, and we're bringing stuff out of the cupboard, and she starts saying, "What's that? What's that?" And in the cupboard, in the back of the cupboard, behind the linens and behind some of the other stuff, is this wooden box. I've never seen it before. And so I took it out to her and she said, "What's that?" It was the sterling silver flatware that my father brought home from Korea when he was in the Army in 1956. Never been used, never been polished, because it didn't need to be polished, because it's never been used, so you don't need to polish it. There's not been any air get to it. And she's like, "Well, what's that?" And I said, "Oh, been in there from..." So by this time it would have been 60 years. Whoa. So admittedly, now it's in my closet at my house, and I just don't know why. Do you have that? You have those things in your life. There is no logical reason, because there's no way in this life or the next one that I'm going to have a big dinner party and get this silver out and be sitting there polishing the stuff. But I'm just not ready. And the good news is, when we're ready, we'll do it, because it's not taking up that much room. But how important it is for us to get dressed up, use the nice whatever it is, go out for a special occasion, because every single moment of every single day for us is sacred and can be the special occasion. Let's get together for no reason at all. Let's have an unbirthday party. My son was born in December, so we used to do unbirthday parties in July, just so that his birthday didn't get lost with Christmas. But how important to recognize those sacred experiences and to create them for ourselves. One of my favorite authors, Debbie Ford, wrote, one more thing. All right, so let me talk about that first. Sometimes in our lives we have a situation, and the situation might be devastating, and we lose out on the sacredness and all the rest of that because we're grieving whatever it is. But we can allow ourselves to remember that no matter what it is, under the appearance, behind the devastation, the universe, spirit, whatever you choose to call it, this loving, nurturing presence is creating the next possibility for us, the next experience for us. If you've ever been to the mountains after a forest fire, it is the appearance of the devastation is heartbreaking, because of course yesterday there was this beautiful forest and now it's gone. But so often the water that they use to put out the fire reaches down to the seeds underneath the surface of the ground. And so the water coupled with the sunlight creates that new experience, and they actually call them fire poppies, which I thought was so cool. It's just there's an amazing life lesson there for us, I believe, because again, when it's devastating, when it's, oh my God, what do I do now? the universe, because we know Spirit loves us and wants us to succeed, is creating the next possibility for us when we allow it to. All right, now my Debbie Ford from The Best Year of Your Life, she wrote, "Time is precious, and when we realize this, we become aware of the importance of claiming each moment. Every moment holds the potential for being memorable. We all have the same power to stop what we're doing and look for a way to make each moment special, my word, sacred. Special moments surround us and can range from the subtle, like watching the sunrise every morning in bed, to the extraordinary, like watching your child blow out the candles on their 4th birthday cake. Life is not a motion picture, but rather a series of Polaroids." And if you don't know what a Polaroid is, I don't want to talk about it. Funny, isn't it, that we just, and I think pretty much all of us here, and ideally y'all online, know what a Polaroid is, but you get the point. Oh, maybe not. Ooh. Message me later and I'll tell you what a Polaroid is. But the point is, it's a series of moments, and how important it is for us to recognize that and allow that in our experience. So mindset, connection, and then the sacred as action. Saying yes. I had dinner with a dear friend last night, and we were talking about the experience of, yes, I want to do that. And the equally sacred, or even more so, experience of saying, thanks so much, but no. The sacred yes and the sacred no, with both equally as important as we stand in our authenticity and our truth. Offering loving kindness. That's the I think it's Buddhist term, but the coming from that place of unconditional love and compassion and interest, recognizing again that as I am the beloved, so are you. And then offering hope and possibility. Sometimes so at Urban Street Angels, which I love to talk about, as you might have figured out, we just recently started this trade school program with funding from the San Diego Padres Foundation. Because so many of our youth come in and, if I can just get a job, if I can just go to McDonald's, if I can just go to Chipotle, if I can just go wherever and wait tables or wash dishes or whatever, and that's fine. But what do you really want to do? So we have a trade school program for cosmetology and one for auto mechanics. And this young woman, this little adorable young woman is in there. She's going to be an auto mechanic. And I think that's fantastic. You mean I could learn how to do that? Yes. Cosmetology, auto mechanics, construction, just a variety of things. So offering that hope and that possibility. And so often in our day-to-day conversations, we can offer that. Well, had you thought about, so I come to you with this situation, but had you thought about this? Had you thought about, and we allow them, our dear ones, to frame whatever that situation is in a different way. That time, that moment, that unconditional love, that loving kindness is absolutely a sacred experience. Hope and possibility. All right. So this next slide is going to make me cry, and so just bear with me because you've seen me before and you will see me again. This quote just absolutely always breaks me up from Hebrews, and forget not hospitality towards strangers, for thereby some were worthy to entertain angels unawares. How often do we have the opportunity? And maybe it's not a big thing. Maybe it's I've got a basket full of groceries and you've got 3 items. Wouldn't you like to go ahead of me at Costco or at Vaughn's or wherever? Paying the toll. You probably won't. You wouldn't do this in Southern California, but paying the coffee for the person behind you at Starbucks. Paying if you're someplace where there are toll roads, pay the toll for the person behind you. Allowing whoever it is to get in ahead of you because, well, I'm in the right lane and it's my lane and I'm driving and you should have thought of getting off here if it was time for you to. And so I'm just going to be a you-know-what and not let you in. Well, admittedly, there are those days, but how wonderful when we take our foot off the gas and allow, or the accelerator, depending on what you drive, and allow the person that really needs to get in to get in. That kindness, that unconditional love, that sacredness. Because it's not possible to give without receiving. It's just not possible to give without receiving. So consider this afternoon the gym, the laundry, the visit with family, the taking the dog out, all of that for me, and perhaps some of those for you as well. Each of those as a sacred experience that we've never done on this day before, and we will never do again. And how wonderful to take the opportunity to recognize that this experience is sacred. This moment, this day, this life is this connection. These connections that we have are sacred. Because we are, and they are, and it is all sacred. We did that. That's what sacredness is. Things are sacred if and only if they matter and cannot be bought. And our time together, our experience of offering unconditional love, all of these things that we've talked about are sacred because they matter. 2 more thoughts to share with you very quickly. So Stephanie Dowrick, absolutely love her. She is an amazing author. She wrote Forgiveness and Other Acts of Love, which is my favorite book of all time. She also wrote Seeking the Sacred, and it's a great book. And in the book she writes, each time I choose the more loving direction, the kinder impulse, the most encouraging word, each time I choose to silence my complaint, my criticism, or deal with conflict nonviolently, each time I open more wholeheartedly to appreciate or express gratitude for what is around me, each time I offer to help or comfort selflessly, or pause to reflect, give inner thanks or praise, or align myself freshly with my finest impulses and self, I rediscover the source of my spiritual life and I live it. And the source of our spiritual life, of course, is this sacredness. That is the truth of our being and the truth of everyone else's. And finally, there we go. From the guy. I've never been able to pronounce his name, and I need to work on that. Thank you so much for that. Only spiritual consciousness, realization of God's presence in oneself and in every other living being can save the world. I see no chance for peace without it. Begin with yourself. There's no time to waste. So with that in mind, join me in the light for just a moment. So staying in this consciousness of oneness, we allow ourselves to be reminded that we are, because there is only one and we are that one, we express that oneness, that love, that compassion in every single moment. because we are the essence, expression, and experience of Spirit, that means that we think with the mind of God, that we see with the eyes of God, that we feel with the heart of God, and in every moment of every day, we allow ourselves moving forward to recognize that, to see the sacredness in the day-to-day experiences, to see the sacredness and feel the gratitude for those things that we might take for granted. We see the sacredness in our interactions with one another, with people we love, with people that we don't so much. No matter who they are the beloved, as are we. And we see our experiences, our time, the lusciousness that we call life as a sacred experience every moment of every day. For our time together, for this beloved spiritual community, we give great thanks. And together we say, and so it is.